Bad Batch episode 9.
Yes.
They got philosophical as fuck on us this week.
Yeah, we had a proper deep episode.
Yeah.
Very sad episode. It even felt, I would say, from like the viewer point of view, like you could feel Echo wasn't there. Like it was weird.
Yeah. They did a phenomenal job on this week's episode.
Like from the get-go, I was like, you can feel that there's someone missing.
100%. There's a couple of shots where I feel like they zoomed it out slightly to make them look smaller in the shot, to make it look like there was like too much space.
It's also like, I think because we've kind of always been used to there being, and this is excluding Omega, obviously, but there's always been like 4 clone troopers, which is the Bad Batch. And it's like Echo came in and Crosshair quite soon after sort of defected. So there's always been 4. So seeing just 3 of them is what like really visually, you're like, hang on a second, this feels smaller than it's ever been.
And it's really interesting as well, because not only did they have the visual things like that where you could see that there wasn't enough people, every character wasn't quite on their A game.
Yes.
And the bit where they were lacking was what Echo gave them, essentially. So, like, Tech wasn't being particularly empathetic.
Yeah.
Echo would pull him up on that. Wrecker was getting a bit aggy.
Yes.
Echo would pull him up on that. Hunter wasn't calming everyone down and getting them to plow ahead. Echo would have been like, Hunter, you got to get everyone going.
It's also things like when it came to like them doing the job, they were there at a mine to extract whatever. And it's like, oh, well, we're a man down. So, and it's like, we're used to Omega and Echo staying on the ship and kind of watching the ship, and the others get on with the job. But like not having that and being spread thin, you almost knew something was going to go wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was some mine that stayed on some remote planet bought. Definitely a scam.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yes,
make it profitable, kind of.
Buy this mine, and you'll definitely get a bunch of resources from it.
It seems like someone had already been there. They'd harvested it to fuck, but they knew they could convince someone that they didn't have the resources to harvest it, so they'll let you know where it is for a finder's fee.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like, we couldn't finish this, so there's definitely more in there for you to get.
Yeah, there's so much more in there, bro. Trust me.
But they find, I forget what the material is called, but
Ipsum,
something like that. But yeah, they find it. Omega has to extract it because it's up in a tight, kind of small spot, of which Omega was in a very, being the more, like, she wasn't bred to be a soldier. She wasn't grown to be a soldier. So she is a different personality to the others. And obviously was feeling the absence of Echo more than, visually and like outwardly showing more of an effect from Echo not being there.
No, I think that was a big part, because the show kind of played on the idea that Omega was the only one who gave a fuck.
Yes.
Because she was the only one who was showing it. But then I really enjoyed the conversation between Tech and Echo, where Tech was like, I get that you're upset.
Oh yeah, Tech. Yeah.
And just because you're so outwardly upset doesn't mean that we're not upset, and assuming that we're not because we're not showing it the same way you are is unfair. And I think that's like, it's an important conversation for a lot of things, because Tech was lacking empathy, which is not right. He should have been more empathetic towards Omega.
Yes.
But Omega also wasn't being fair in assuming everyone would react the same way she was. And that she thought her reaction was the only correct reaction.
We got to see essentially more of how Tech, like a deeper dive into how Tech's character operates. Because obviously we have like Wrecker's the big, strong, slightly dumb guy. Hunter's the leader. Tech, obviously very intelligent. And like a lot of intelligent people, IRL, like highly intelligent, they're like very straightforward with, well, this is what it is. This is the fact. This is we can't. It's not something I can change or affect. So why let it bother me?
Mm,
Sort of, or like why give it any more time?
yeah,
And they really kind of sold Tech as that sort of person. And I think we got a really big character development from both Tech and Omega. With, like you said, Tech realizing, okay, there is some empathy. Like other people
yeah,
need to see empathy, and Omega being also Tech realizing they're not just soldiers anymore.
yeah,
With Omega
exactly.
being like, we're a family, um, and kind of challenging his thinking into being more than they're just a mission and soldiers.
I'm also really glad they didn't take what I thought was going to be the easy way out with the story of when Omega was upset after Tech said um, the squad existed before Echo. I was waiting for the line to end up being the squad existed before me. Does that mean you won't care if I leave?
Mm.
And I'm glad they didn't go that way because that way would have felt a bit lazy and easy. Whereas they actually kind of looked into why the characters were feeling the way they're feeling a bit more.
Well, yeah, I feel like that line was setting them up for that kind of development because
Yeah,
it's making Tech realize that showing his perspective, like how his brain works, but then also it being challenged and like
yeah.
I also liked how although Omega was like went off on her own and was obviously upset and frustrated, she was like, "Oh, well, I found something that we need for a task, so I'm gonna get on and do with it."
Well, I guess it's kind of like Omega is supposed to be, or seems to me anyway. I mean, Omega's like the top, like in I forget them systems where Omega's one of the names used, Alpha and Omega and stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that. She like Omega is always one like supposed to be at the top end. So I think that kind of comes from the idea that she's supposed to be the best of each of the characters.
yeah. It's
So
that.
she's smart like Tech, she's a leader like Hunter, she's very caring and protective of her friends like Wrecker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why each of these stories so far this season seems to be her and one of the guys doing something important.
Mm, yeah. It's
Because it's showing Omega is the best of all of them.
yes. Um, but like overall, what went on in this episode, like on the Ipsum, um, and them losing their ship,
Yeah.
which it's I don't know if they I think they do get the ship back
So
somehow.
do I. I've got a feeling that character that we saw with the goggles
Hmm.
is more important, which is why they bothered showing the character.
Yes, I was for the same.
They could have just had like the goggle crosshair going to the ship and then we get the ship being stolen. They didn't need to add that extra scene of us seeing the character's design
Yeah, there's too much flavor into that character's like outfit
for
and
it to
design.
just be a
So
throwaway character. Yeah.
yeah, I do think that's going to show up, and we're going to somehow get the ship back. Um, and then obviously also, I like how they called Sid out on. She was like, "Well, this was the job. It's your fault." And then they're like, "Hang on a second, we've done all this fucking shit for you. You owe
Mm-hmm.
us." And Sid being like, "Oh yeah, I suppose so." But they found a fuck ton of that Ipsum
Yeah, they did.
and what is a derelict town. So there's no one really about other than these people that are
Scavengers.
scavengers. Um, they could very easily come back for more of that to make some money,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is
Exactly.
gonna. It wouldn't surprise me if they come back down the line.
Yo, babe, wake up! New money making glitch just dropped.
Well, I'm
Um,
thinking like if they're helping the rebellion, and it's like,
yeah,
oh, we need funds. Well, there's a
yeah, no,
fuck
hundred
ton of
percent,
resource that we could go get and sell and make some money.
yeah. But I found it interesting that this week wasn't a double episode drop, but it's definitely a two-parter.
Yeah, they.
I mean, next week it only makes sense for it to follow directly
Oh
on.
yeah, it's gonna. Um, that's a good point. They've. I think what this second half of the season is gonna get more less time hoppy like we've had very small little time hops between episodes where
Yeah.
obviously downtime between missions we've not needed to see. So I wonder if we'll start getting more episodes following closely on as it builds up to the finale.
I'm still not 100% sold on the idea that we don't get to see Darth Vader.
You're really hoping, aren't you?
I mean, I really enjoyed his design in the last season of Clone Wars.
Um,
So,
I wonder.
like,
I'm like, do we see him or do we just get a name drop?
yeah, just like a reference to.
There's probably going to be some sprinkle. I'm wondering if there's also going to be some reference to um the little rebel group with Chopper and all them, from the Rebel show.
Yeah.
If there's some reference of their group being off on their own,
Well,
also doing stuff.
now I've not watched enough of Rebels, but is the blue hair not Ezra from Rebels?
Um,
Is it Ezra?
I don't think does I can't remember if he has blue hair. No, he didn't have. Well, he has dark blue black, but then he cuts it short.
Okay.
So,
Got ya. Okay, so it's not going to be him we saw in the goggles then.
oh, you thinking who stole the ship?
Yeah, I was just wondering because, like I said, I've not really seen a lot of the show.
I didn't see that and thought of any character I've
Yeah.
seen before.
Now that I've pulled up some shorts, his hair is a lot darker than I initially thought it was.
Um, I'm wondering if that character might be connected with the pirate woman.
Maybe, very maybe.
Potentially, I don't know. We'll find out probably in the next
Yeah,
episode.
everything will reveal itself.
It will.
But I do agree that character had far too much flavour for a throwaway.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway,